life and death, two concepts that seem simple at first but carry profound complexity when we try to understand them. Most people experience life as a continuous flow, waking up, moving through the day, interacting with others, and eventually growing old. Death is seen as the opposite, the final end. But if we examine these concepts closely from a scientific perspective, they are not as mysterious as our emotions make them seem, and yet they are deeply remarkable. Life is, in essence, a pattern of matter and energy organized in a very particular way. The molecules in your body interact in complex networks. Cells divide and repair themselves, and organs coordinate with astonishing precision to maintain the balance necessary for survival. In this sense, life is not a magical force but a temporary organization, a delicate pattern that persists for a time. When that pattern can no longer sustain itself, when cells fail to function and organs cease to operate, that is what we call death. The atoms and energy that form the living organism do not disappear. They simply return to the environment, continuing their existence in other forms. It is not a disappearance but a transformation. Understanding this requires a shift in thinking. Life is not about the individual particles that make it up, but about the arrangement, the interactions, and the processes that hold them together in a functioning pattern. Imagine a sandcastle on the beach. For a few hours, it stands beautifully, towers reaching skyward, walls shaped with precision. Waves come, wind blows, and eventually the sandcastle collapses. The sand itself remains, it has simply rearranged. Life is much the same. The matter and energy persist, but the pattern we recognize as a living being eventually dissolves. From the perspective of physics and chemistry, there is nothing mystical about death. It is simply the natural outcome of the physical processes that maintain life, processes that eventually fail. This may sound stark, but it is also profoundly elegant. There is a kind of beauty in understanding that life is an extraordinary arrangement, a temporary harmony of particles, energy, and information. The fragility of this pattern does not diminish its wonder, it enhances it. Every heartbeat, every thought, every movement is a manifestation of countless interactions, all occurring in precise coordination. Humans, however, struggle with death because we are conscious. We remember the past, we anticipate the future, and we experience the present in vivid detail. Consciousness creates the illusion that we are separate from the flow of matter and energy, that we exist independently of the physical processes that sustain us. Our minds are wired to fear the end of our individual pattern, to seek continuity and permanence where none exists. Yet by examining life and death scientifically, we can see that this fear is rooted in our biology rather than in reality. Life is extraordinary because it exists at all, not because it is eternal. Death is not a failure. It is the natural and inevitable conclusion of the processes that define living systems. By understanding life as a temporary pattern and death as the transformation of that pattern, we begin to see reality in a way that is both honest and profoundly moving, revealing the elegance of the universe and the remarkable nature of our existence within it. As we move deeper into understanding life and death, it becomes clear that identity is not tied to the specific atoms in our bodies. Over the course of several years, most of the atoms that make up your body are replaced. Your skin cells die and regenerate. Your blood is constantly renewed, and even the molecules in your bones gradually turn over. Yet, through all this change, you perceive yourself as the same person. This is not a mystery, but a reflection of what identity truly is. Identity is a pattern, a specific organization of matter, energy, and information that behaves in a coherent way over time. The individual particles may come and go, but the pattern, the interactions, the processes, the continuity of consciousness is what we recognize as you. Philosophers have long wrestled with similar questions using thought experiments like the ship of Theseus. If every plank of a ship is replaced over time, is it still the same ship? The answer is not straightforward, because what matters is not the individual pieces but the arrangement, the continuity, and the functionality. Similarly, Our bodies are in constant flux, but the pattern of life persists until death, when the organization can no longer maintain itself. Consciousness is intimately tied to this pattern. Our minds experience time, perceive ourselves as persistent entities, and construct memories that give us a sense of continuity. Yet consciousness is a product of the brain, a complex interaction of neurons and chemical signals. Like a whirlpool in a river, consciousness exists as long as the patterns in the system are maintained. When the underlying system fails, the whirlpool dissipates, and so does consciousness. This analogy highlights why humans struggle with the concept of death. We experience ourselves as singular, continuous entities, but in reality, our consciousness is emergent and temporary. The fear and uncertainty surrounding death are natural, but they do not reflect the fundamental mechanics of life. Life is an extraordinary phenomenon precisely because it is transient. Each thought, sensation, and emotion emerges from countless interactions that are both precise and fragile. This temporality does not diminish the value or beauty of life. It enhances it. Death, in this view, is not an annihilation but a transformation. Matter and energy are conserved. When a living organism dies, its constituent parts are redistributed into the environment, contributing to new forms of life and new patterns elsewhere. The end of one pattern allows the emergence of another. The cycle of life and death is continuous, a vast and elegant process in which energy and matter are rearranged into new configurations, sustaining the dynamic equilibrium of the universe. By viewing life and death this way, we begin to detach from the human-centered narrative that death is something to fear. It is not an end in an absolute sense. It is the natural conclusion of a process and a contribution to the ongoing story of matter and energy. Understanding this scientifically provides a perspective that is neither comforting nor disheartening. It is honest. We see the universe as it is, governed by laws, predictable in many ways, yet infinitely intricate, allowing for the temporary emergence of consciousness, beauty, and life itself. This perspective invites a profound appreciation of our fleeting existence and reveals the elegance and continuity inherent in the cosmos. As we continue exploring life and death, consciousness becomes the next frontier. We often imagine ourselves as singular, independent entities, flowing seamlessly from moment to moment. This is what makes the thought of death so unsettling. We feel as if the self is a continuous thread, but science offers a different perspective. Consciousness is not a separate thing floating above the brain. It is a process, an emergent property arising from countless interactions within the neural network. The firing of neurons, the chemical signals, the electrical patterns, these create the experience we call awareness. It is remarkable, fragile, and entirely dependent on the proper functioning of the underlying system. To illustrate, imagine a whirlpool forming in a river. Water flows constantly, yet the whirlpool exists as a distinct, recognizable pattern for a time. If the river's flow changes or the whirlpool is disrupted, it dissipates. No single water molecule defines the whirlpool, and yet the pattern is real while it exists. Consciousness is very similar. It emerges, persists, and eventually dissipates when the brain ceases to function. This perspective helps explain why humans struggle with the concept of death. Our minds evolved to focus on survival, to maintain continuity, and to perceive ourselves as ongoing entities. We are not wired to accept impermanence. Memories, emotions, and the sensation of self reinforce the illusion of permanence. But reality operates differently. Life and consciousness are temporary arrangements of matter and energy, beautiful patterns that arise in the vast flow of the universe. Death does not negate the significance of these patterns. It simply ends one configuration while allowing the components to participate in new arrangements. Another way to think about this is through the lens of information. Life can be seen as a particular arrangement of information in matter. Death occurs when the system can no longer maintain that arrangement. Yet the information itself is not destroyed, it is redistributed. Atoms and molecules return to the environment, joining new systems, contributing to the growth of plants, the formation of other living beings, or simply becoming part of the ongoing cycles of the cosmos. This understanding reframes death from an ending to a transformation, part of a continuous process that extends far beyond the individual. Humans often attach narrative meaning to life and death, imagining permanence, legacy, or an afterlife, but science offers a different, more precise perspective. Life and consciousness are temporary emergent phenomena. Death is not a tragedy in the laws of nature. It is the predictable outcome of physical processes. Recognizing this does not make life meaningless. On the contrary, it highlights the rarity and beauty of each pattern, each fleeting configuration of matter and energy capable of experiencing awareness. The temporality of life magnifies its significance, not by extending its duration, but by emphasizing its unique, intricate complexity. Feynman often spoke of understanding the universe honestly, without embellishment or superstition. Seeing life and death in this way is consistent with that philosophy. The moment we accept that our consciousness is a temporary, emergent pattern, we gain clarity. We begin to appreciate the extraordinary fact that such patterns exist at all, even if only briefly, and that the processes underlying life continue to operate long after any individual pattern dissolves. In this view, death is not something to be feared, but a natural and inevitable part of the elegant, ongoing dance of matter, energy, and information that defines the universe. Life and death are not separate events, but points along a continuous spectrum of change. Every living organism participates in this cycle, whether it is a single-celled bacterium dividing and eventually dying, a tree growing, producing seeds, and returning to the soil, or a human being living, thinking, and eventually ceasing to exist. From the perspective of physics, matter and energy are conserved, they do not disappear. What dies in one form simply contributes to the emergence of new forms. In this way, life is not isolated, and death is not final. The atoms and molecules that once formed a living body continue to exist, reconfigured and repurposed throughout the environment. One could say that death is simply a change of pattern, a reorganization of the same fundamental components that sustain the universe. This realization has profound implications for how we understand existence. When we examine life scientifically, we see that consciousness, memory, and identity are emergent properties of matter in complex arrangements. The fleeting nature of these arrangements is not a flaw, but a natural consequence of the universe's dynamics. Systems maintain organization only temporarily before entropy and probability determine that they will change. The flow of life is governed by the same physical laws that dictate the motion of planets, the behavior of atoms, and the interactions of energy and matter across cosmic scales. Human perception, however, struggles with this reality. Our brains evolved to interpret the world in terms of immediate cause and effect, to recognize patterns, and to predict survival outcomes. We are not naturally equipped to perceive impermanence, probability, or the vast time scales over which the universe operates. Our emotions, memory, and self-awareness exaggerate the sense of continuity and make the idea of death profoundly unsettling. Yet science provides a different perspective, one that is neither comforting nor frightening, but true to the workings of the universe. Life is remarkable because of its complexity, because of the patterns that emerge temporarily, and because these patterns allow for consciousness to exist, to observe, and to reflect. Death is remarkable for the same reasons. It is the natural endpoint of these patterns, allowing matter and energy to be recycled and organized into new configurations, continuing the grand, ongoing process of the cosmos. This understanding invites a philosophical yet scientific contemplation. By acknowledging that life and death are simply stages in the continuous flow of matter and energy, we gain clarity about the nature of existence. The fear of death, the desire for permanence, and the insistence on continuity are products of human perception rather than universal law. In this light, we see that we are not isolated points in the universe, but temporary patterns within a vast, interconnected system. Each life contributes to the ongoing rearrangement of matter and energy, and each death facilitates new patterns, new possibilities, and the continuation of the universe's intricate processes. Recognizing this transforms the way we see reality. Life is not a solitary struggle to persist indefinitely. It is a fleeting yet extraordinary manifestation of the universe's fundamental laws. Death is not a termination, but a transformation, an integral part of the cosmos' elegant, ongoing dance. When we observe these processes honestly, as Feynman advocated, we find a profound beauty and clarity. Life and death are neither enemies nor mysteries to be feared. They are natural outcomes of the universe's mechanics, revealing the delicate patterns, temporary arrangements, and ongoing cycles that define reality itself. When we examine life and death from the perspective of science, we begin to see patterns that are both elegant and humbling. Every organism, from the smallest microbe to the largest mammal, is a temporary arrangement of matter and energy. Consciousness, perception, and thought emerge from these arrangements for a time, allowing the universe to observe itself through us. When these patterns can no longer be maintained, the process we call death occurs. This is not a tragedy in the laws of physics. It is simply the inevitable outcome of natural processes. Atoms, energy, and information do not vanish. They continue redistributed and reorganized, contributing to new patterns, new forms of life, and the ongoing cycles that define existence. By viewing death in this way, we can remove the fear and mystique that so often accompanies it. We realize that life is not about permanence or survival at all costs, but about the transient beauty of complexity, organization, and emergent phenomena. Every heartbeat, every thought, every sensation is extraordinary precisely because it exists temporarily as part of an intricate and fleeting pattern. Consciousness allows us to perceive the universe, reflect on our place within it, and marvel at the very fact of existence. The temporality of life enhances its value. It gives significance to each experience, not by extending time, but by highlighting the uniqueness of the patterns that occur. Death, rather than being an end, is a transformation, a continuation of matter and energy in new arrangements, a return to the ongoing flow of the cosmos. From this perspective, each life is a contribution to the larger system. Our atoms and molecules will participate in countless other forms long after the specific pattern of use dissolves. This understanding does not diminish individuality or the importance of life. It situates each existence within a broader, ongoing tapestry that extends far beyond human perception. Feynman often emphasized the importance of seeing reality honestly, without embellishment or comforting illusions. Life and death are processes governed by the laws of nature, neither arbitrary nor supernatural, and neither tragic nor cruel. Recognizing this allows us to appreciate the extraordinary nature of life for what it truly is, a temporary manifestation of the universe's inherent complexity, a fleeting but remarkable pattern capable of self-awareness, creativity, and reflection. Death is simply the endpoint of this pattern, a necessary and natural transition, and the cycle continues without pause. Observing life and death in this way can profoundly change how we perceive reality. We no longer see ourselves as isolated entities that begin and end, but as temporary patterns in a universe that is ongoing, lawful, and endlessly intricate. Every moment of consciousness, every fleeting thought, every act of existence becomes more precious precisely because it is impermanent. The brevity of life does not lessen its meaning. It amplifies it, inviting us to engage fully with the processes that allow us to perceive, understand, and participate in the cosmos. Life is a temporary miracle of organization, and death is a natural transformation that ensures the continuity of the universe's ongoing dance. When we embrace this view scientifically and honestly, as Feynman did, we see reality not as something to fear, but as something to marvel at. The patterns of life and death, the rise and fall of consciousness, and the redistribution of matter and energy are all part of a single, elegant process. By understanding this, we gain clarity, perspective, and a deep appreciation for the fleeting, yet extraordinary gift of existence. Recognizing that we are part of an ongoing, magnificent cosmic story, woven into the fabric of the universe itself.